everyone, my name is Lutfi Reski Rahmawati. I am from the group 5 and I'm from the B1. My student number is K2219047. So in this occasion, I want to share my opinion for the final project of critical listening course. Then my group topic is about the COVID generation, the lost generation. 1 year ago, the lockdown to fight the emerging pandemic began affecting our life. Many have struggled to cope, be it from unemployment, school closures, the loss of a loved one, or loneliness. For young people, stepping out into the world this year has been undeniably difficult. The global statistics are definitive. While the virus itself may not be a direct threat to children and also youth, the social and economic impact of the pandemic certainly is especially for those living in vulnerable circumstances. There are already reports of climbing poverty rates and depending inequality in education. Meanwhile, the International Labour Organization citing unemployment loss among young people more than double that for adults, one of a real risk of a lost generation. It is painfully clear that the pandemic is set to erase years of steady progress. But there is a hope. We know it is possible to find opportunities in crisis and build a more sustainable and equitable future for tomorrow's adults. Since the COVID-19 pandemic broke out, the world of education cannot run normally. Face-to-face learning is changing to distance learning, online and offline. Education and health are primary needs, but are equally important. However, now the government has to choose which one gets the most attention. I saw and experienced the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. It was very sad for me. For example, I feel disadvantaged by the online learning because I feel it is not effective for me to capture and understand the material provided. Me sometimes tend to ignore the material given by the teacher. On the other hand, in terms of culture and religion, there are also many impacts caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected the younger generation to become a lost generation. I have watched several types of video related to this topic, such as an explanation of the lost generation, its impact, the various problems that arise in it, and the challenges that must be faced by the current generation. The video I watch are almost in the form of news, and with research person, the younger generation such as children, teenagers, or students who have just finished their studies. The video sources come from official YouTube channels such as ENCA, then CNA Insider, CGTN America, Channel 4 News, NBC News, and DW News. Because of the credibility of all these YouTube channels, I think they have done their research first before displaying the content. In other words, also I think all the videos are trusted. The video contents agrees and assumes that the COVID-19 pandemic can cause the current young generation to become a lost generation. Various impacts caused in all fields, whether economic, educational, socio-cultural, and others, have a bad influence on the current generation. The handling of existing problems must continue to be improved to provide certainty of their needs. Various solutions and innovation must always be developed. On the other hand, the speakers, researchers, and reporters in the video also believe that lost generation can be prevented and hope for a better future life after the COVID-19 pandemic is still open. So, I got the video from a credible YouTube channel as I mentioned earlier before. Then when they made a social reports about the current generation opinion regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, they provided very relevant coverage with various accurate data and also some research. The speakers in the video also gave their personal opinions as clearly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. There is one video I remember that I watched before. A girl made a song to strengthen everyone in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. In my opinion, the lyrics of the song can make everyone's have their spirits and their creativity it has can inspire others to continue to be able to work during this COVID-19 pandemic. Everyone has their own life and everyone also important, and I think it can be accepted by the listeners. Lost generation can be faced and prevented by efforts from within ourselves and those around us. It starts with strengthening families so that children can grow up with stable relationships. In these difficult times, we must provide increased social protection services and also direct financial support to struggling families so they can stay together. We must secure access to education for all children and youth and also invest in reducing the digital divide. And we must not underestimate the mental health toll of the pandemic. Now, more than ever, young people, especially those who have no one to fall back on, need psychological support, then guidance and encouragement from mental health professionals. Yet above all, we must listen to children and young people's voices and stay responsive to their needs in the face of uncertainty. We must foster youth networks and encourage a greater sense of ownership and control by supporting youth-led initiatives.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Arizal Mulyandika. I'm from Group 5 and I'm from B1. In this special occasion, I would like to tell my opinion or my perspective on my topic about the COVID generation is the lost generation. So let's go to the first question. What was your general initial perspective, idea or opinion about the topic? So let me tell my perspective and my opinion regarding the issue of the COVID-19 generation is the lost generation. So it is true if the COVID generation can be said to be the lost generation. Why is that? Through my point of view as a student feeling this phenomenon. So let's flashback to the time before the pandemic of COVID-19 where lessons were usually carried out directly in class or what we call face-to-face learning. But after the pandemic, all activities were carried out by online, including activities learning. Learning activities are carried out online. Of course, this greatly affects the continuity of learning activities. For example, usually teachers can monitor the learning process directly, but with online learning, the teachers cannot monitor activities directly. Besides that, students cannot interact with each other directly. Student with student and even students with their teachers, and there are still many impacts from this phenomenon. I can say that this phenomenon is a culture shock, which culture shock itself means the term used to describe what happens to people when they face unusual environment and condition. And that statement is very related to current student conditions, and I agree with that issue regarding the COVID generation is a lost generation. So we go to the second question. So what influenced your initial opinion? What influenced me? Because I experienced it by myself and saw the situation as the true condition. In addition, my initial opinion is supported by various events that have been experienced by my environment around me, such as my peers, my teachers, and the media. They all said the same thing as what I experienced. So the next question is, what video related to the topic have you watched? I watched videos from various sources such as from YouTube, television news, podcasts, and etc. And I think the sources I have watched are very trustworthy because the average channel I have seen has many subscribers, like 1,000, even a million. So most of them are news channels. So the data they get is very accurate and in accordance with reality. Next is what were the speakers' perspective about the topic. Were they supportive or positive or against a negative related to the issue? So, the speaker's perspective on this issue was very supportive. Most of them strongly agree with this issue because it is true that the COVID generation is the lost generation. I give an example of the opinion of one of them is Heidi Prisbilla. She is a correspondent for NBC News who agrees with the statement the COVID generation is a lost generation by pointing out the tone of her voice of the speakers in the video shows that she agrees and other sources also say that they agree with this issue. Next is how were the speakers from the video convincing me? The thing that convinced me at the first is most of them agree with the issue of the COVID generation is a lost generation, and I also agree with that issue. The second one is the data presented in the video is very reliable, and they don't just argue with their own opinions, but also they add various sources where each source has more diverse point of view. Therefore, I am very confident with the video that I have seen and can strengthen my opinion about the COVID generation is a lost generation, or agree with that topic. And the last question: what is your final personal perspective or opinion about the topic? So my final perspective or opinion on the topic remains the same in that I agree that the COVID generation can be said to be a lost generation. As I explained it earlier on this topic, I have said various reasons why the COVID generation is a lost generation. Besides that, my opinion is supported by various reliable sources, and most of them agree on the issues. Therefore, I state that my final perspective still agrees with the issue or topic. But outside of this topic, seeing the development of COVID in the world, especially in Indonesia, I have an optimistic view that we can all fight this COVID pandemic with vaccination programs, always wear masks wherever we go, always wash our hands and live with clean lines. So I believe that this can reduce and dampen the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. And I hope this condition will improve soon, so that the COVID generation is not a lost generation and all of us can still survive from this condition. I think that's all from my opinion or my perspective on self-reflection. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
My name is Muhammad Fauzi Abdillah. You can call me Fauzi. I'm from Group 5 in P1 class. In this assignment, my topic is the COVID generation is that the lost generation, and the state of education influenced me to form an initial opinion on this topic. There are many types from the videos, from interviews, news, or expert opinion. You could say these videos are reliable because they are sourced from reputable YouTube channels, from news providers on TV, and so on. So I think it's reliable. And there are various opinions from it, some of them supportive because they are really having a hard time during the pandemic. And there are those who oppose it because they believe that people can still carry out their normal activities. And there are those who offer solution in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. In the video, the speakers conveys his complaints, where it relates to how I feel during the pandemic. In addition, there are also speakers from expert circles, so I believe it. And my final opinion, I feel I can still get up and do what I can to survive during this pandemic. So I don't think it's the end of the generation yet. This will be my final opinion. So thank you.
My group initial perspective on this topic is the same as mine. My group members are agrees on the issue. regarding COVID generation is lost generation, and the reason they put forward are so closely related to my opinion. So I can say that we all have the same opinion or perspective as mine.
What we feel as a student during this COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, we get lost because of this pandemic. The disadvantage we can get are in the continuity of learning, as well as other activities that are limited. We cannot access face-to-face learning or offline learning. Instead, learning is done online. In online learning, most of us feel we cannot absorb knowledge as well as when we do it offline. The learning method, yes, because the learning method has also changed. We feel that as students during this pandemic, the tasks given are hard to do and there are lots of them. I thought maybe this will be different when the learning takes place offline. And there are also restrictions on student activities because to support the social restriction program, which must be done to reduce the turmoil of COVID-19. However, this caused a decrease in student activity on campus or in organizations that should run smoothly but face obstacles. However, even in this disaster, we feel we can certainly find wisdom from it in this pandemic. Yes, in this pandemic, many learning and activities are done at home. So because of this, some of us decide to use it to master a new hobby or work to gain experience.